Hi everyone, my name is David Handler and I'm the director of Transformers Rise of Unicron.
My name is Martin Roa, and I am the writer of Transformers Rise of Unicron.
And I'm James Manoligas, and I'm the 3D artist of Transformers Rise of Unicron. I was responsible for making the new models of the Autobots, updating the models the production already had, creating concept art for some characters, and animating the Autobot teaser trailer.
Today we're going to give an up-close look on the Autobot team as well as an outlook of what to look forward to in the new year.
And we would like to start off with the new member of the Autobot team, the young Autobot Lieutenant Cliffjumper.
Cliffjumper in this film is a young Autobot character who has had many scarring experiences in the war for Cybertron. In this movie he meets the new protagonist Max, and together with the Autobots they face off against the rising threat of Unicron, while also exploring a scarring event from Cliff's past.
Originally Cliff's design was inspired by his appearance from the Bumblebee movie. When I joined the project, I requested that we take a second look at Cliff's design and revamp it. His new face takes inspiration from his Fall of Cybertron design, alongside some key design features from his 2007 toy.
We wanted a young look for the character so we could have a design that could be visually newer for the general audience, as well as someone who can serve as the main conduit towards the current situation, given their inexperience.
His other significant design changes are the placement of his wheels on his back, which I feel give him a unique design trait, and finally his weapon, which is very much Pacific Rim inspired. Cliffjumper takes on multiple appearances in the film. We first see him in his Mitsubishi Starion form. The car is meant to be in horrible condition, something you see at a scrapyard, hence the miscolored vehicle panels, bent bumper, and even bullet holes.
Another significant motive is in the film is the Seat Ibiza, which, fun fact, is David Handler's car in real life.
One of the reasons we chose the Ibiza as the alt mode for Cliffjumper is because that enabled us to use an actual car for the movie, and it's also a lot easier to shoot whenever Max directly interacts with the car. And also, it gives that live-action element that we wanted to achieve with this movie. There are story reasons as well as to why he changes into the forms that he does throughout the movie. And of course, we also haven't revealed every form that he takes yet. But as to why he changes into those forms, well, you'll just have to wait and see for that.
Now, as we know, Drift is meant to be the samurai of the Autobot team, trying to keep his violent ex-Decepticon tendencies at bay to better serve the preservation of freedom.
Drift was actually the second robot model I made for the film. Initially when I joined the project, Laszlo had created a concept art for Drift where he turned it to the Mercedes-AMG GT Black series. It was black and had an orange vinyl down the side of the car.
When James and I had talked about Drift, we had agreed that the vehicle mode would remain as the AMG given that we already had the 3D model. However, once it was time to work on Drift and create his robot mode, we discovered that the model of the AMG had been lost.
And in that moment, we decided that we would go for a different look. When coming up for a new alt mode for Drift, I knew he had to be a Japanese car. There were many choices I could have gone for, but there was one particular car that I felt reflected the Drift character the best, and that was the Honda NSX. A severely underrated car, and one I feel not many people would choose if they had to redo Drift's alt mode. The curves of the vehicle blend very well with the aggressive design of the robot mode. I knew that one key difference I wanted to add to Drift was the addition of vehicle kibble onto his robot design. The main issue I always had with the Age of Extinction designs was the lack of vehicle parts on the robots. For this film, I aimed to have a lot more car parts present on all of the robots, whilst respecting the original designs.
Drift was also that Kickstarter that sort of changed our philosophy when it came to how we approached modeling the different characters. Because earlier on we just tried to replicate the designs as closely as we could, but now we really took a step back and had a look at what we could maybe change with the model or what we couldn't.
The biggest challenge was figuring out Drift's color scheme. Many different colors were tested on the design. He was originally meant to be orange until we finally returned to the blue, which I think suits the character perfectly.
Finally, the most striking addition to Drift's updated design is his Oni-inspired battle mask, which is also a hint to his former days as the character Deadlock. This hint to his Decepticon past will not only be reflected in the design of his battle mask, but will also be explored upon in the actual film.
Hound is still the very much same character that he has been throughout the Bayverse. He's very trigger happy and loves to head into the battlefield with as much weaponry as he can carry.
When the time came to make Hound, I had a very clear idea of what his alt mode would be and where the parts would go in his robot mode. Although a 3D model already existed for Hound's alt form, I wanted to go in a different direction. The Jeep hologram is a concept I made very much inspired by his Age of Extinction design, as well as a subtle nod to his G1 alt form, that being the original Willys Jeep. I felt it was the perfect opportunity to connect both worlds into one. Hound's robot mode was a lot of fun to make. He's just covered in weapons and bullets. The Jeep parts blend in perfectly with the design.
And then there are the dog tags. The dog tags are an idea that Martini came up with. They incorporate a lot of crazy ideas and crazy details that you probably won't notice throughout the movie. But there's one detail in specifically that we wanted to point out, and that is the blood type of Hound.
So the information that I found that is present in a US dog tag is last name, first name, social security number, blood type, and religious preference. So for the blood type, I went to rewatch Age of Extinction. I used the scene of Optimus and Kate's barn, freeze-framed, and then used a color picker to get the hex code of the energon that leaks out of Optimus's head, using that as the blood type for Hound.
Now, if that isn't a crazy detail, then I don't know what is. Or as we in the Rise of Unicron production like to call it, a Martini detail. And that goes to show how much detail we put into these figures and models for the movie that you probably won't notice in the movie itself. But hey, they're really cool, let's be honest.
One of his more noticeable upgrades comes in the form of his shoulder cannon, which is a nod to his TLK toy and of course Generation 1. Once the camo livery with the dirt was applied to the design, the model just came to life. Despite not me stating it before, he is the model I'm probably the most proud of.
Crosshairs was a bit of a tricky character to do, because while we had Harlow's model, which was a perfect replica of Crosshairs, we didn't know how much we could change, because it's such a distinct design, that if you change too much, it wouldn't be anymore the character you know and love.
So in the end, I settled for minor changes, primarily in the chest area. By far the biggest new addition to his design is the rear wing that is attached to his back. His old mode was initially going to be the then new C8 Corvette, but in the end, I decided to take on the challenge of designing a new Corvette, as they are some of my favourite cars ever built. I call it the C9 Stingray concept, and it takes inspiration from more classic Corvette, and even has a subtle design reference to the 2009 Corvette Stingray.
Whilst the overall look of Crosshairs may have minimal changes to his character design, his weapon arsenal is something that we experimented with quite a bit, and you'll definitely be seeing some interesting weaponry in the actual film. He may not look that different from the previous films, but we can guarantee that there's definitely plenty of love and care put into this design. Now, here's the thing. Interestingly, in the earlier versions of Rise of Unicron, Cogman didn't actually exist. Granted, we found that it was justifiable, given that we didn't feel he was a relevant or impactful enough character to be properly included in the film.
Cogman is a character I feel many people tend to forget about. I felt that given the right circumstances, Cogman could be a very well utilised character in Rise of Unicron.
So when the major script rewrite actually took place, James told that idea to us, and to his surprise, Martini and I were actually quite open to the idea, and furthermore he also got the chance to voice Cogman himself.
I felt that there was a lot of potential for this character given that he is supposed to be a headmaster, a concept that although mentioned, was never utilised more. So for Rise of Unicron, Cogman deserved to receive his full body design. Whilst we never saw it in the films, Cogman did receive a toy in the form of the Aston Martin DB11, so it was only fitting that he gets an Aston Martin alt form for this film. The Aston Martin Vantage concept is essentially a mashup design of some of my favourite modern Aston Martin cars. The robot mode is decorated with multiple gold highlights and constant moving part, giving him that clockwork quality that is integral to his design. His face, whilst very similar to his normal form, bears many but subtle changes as to differentiate the design. I felt it a bit weird if he just transformed from his small form into an exact copy of his head that you already had. I'm really happy with the outcome of Cogman's design, and can't wait for people to see him in action in Rise of Unicron. And then there's Hot Rod.
Oh boy, Hot Rod.
Oh, Hot Rod.
Hot Rod was definitely a controversial topic. His appearance in The Last Night definitely upset people, Martini being among them.
I was always kind of in the middle when it came to Hot Rod's design, but James and Martini, they were not. And it's actually funny that Hot Rod's face, out of all things, was the one thing that we most discussed throughout this production so far, because it was actually the first task that James ever did for our production to showcase his skills. So it's actually quite funny that this one thing that he started working on for our production became for some time the bane of his existence.
So when the time came to fully model Hot Rod for our film, I knew there would be problems.
While James wanted to keep most of the design that Hot Rod had for The Last Night, Martini wanted a complete redo of it.
There was a lot of back and forth when discussing ideas and suggestions, and you can even see this in our first look, where Hot Rod still appears with his original face. That was because we hadn't yet decided on the fate of the design. However, after the trailer released, we found the middle ground and went with the design that retains the main characteristics of The Last Night's head in order to not be too big of a departure, whilst also incorporating the aspects that I wanted in the design, which were to assimilate him to how he looked in Generation 1 and also especially the IDW comics.
His overall body remained similar, the major changes being the exhaust on his arms, taking inspiration from his classic design, which can be used as weapons, and of course the aforementioned head. The other significant change to Hot Rod is his ult form. He receives a new vehicle mode in the form of the Lamborghini Revuelto. The car is fitted with extra aero parts that give it more of an aggressive look.
His new design gives him a more serious look, and also the credibility that he needs, as well as the expressiveness. And that, I think, is really important for Rise of Unicron, because in that movie he will have a lot more of a prominent role, and also will have to resolve quite a few crucial situations throughout the movie. There really is no Transformers film without one of its most famous characters, and that is of course Bumblebee. So for his design, we really needed to find something that would live up to the Bumblebee name.
Designing a new Ultimate for Bee was my first task given to me upon joining the project. This was the design I came up with for Bee's new Camaro. Later on, I modeled the car and created a short animation presenting the new ult.
Last but not least is the leader of the Autobots, Optimus Prime. With Optimus, we wanted something similar to what we did with Bumblebee, so the idea was to make a design that remains similar to The Last Night, while adding back that
into Optimus Prime.
And And that concludes the breakdown for all the main Autobot characters in Transformers Rise of Unicron.
There are, of course, plenty of other Autobots in the film, some of which have been revealed already. However, there are, of course, plenty more that remain a secret.
I'm now currently working really hard to get the rest of the models done for the film.
We understand that it's frustrating to keep waiting, but we just want this movie to be the best it can be.
We very much appreciate your support and patience. If you're new to the channel, please consider liking and subscribing in order to keep up to date with updates from the project.
And be sure to check out my channel, Monolika Studios, for more automotive content and animations. Link in the description below.
That is all for now. We wish you a happy holidays.
And we'll see you in the new year.
Until then, enjoy.